depression is touching my soul. I know what I want, but I just don't know how to go back to me.
You probably recognize that song, but I'm not playing along to the original Hendrix version. I'm playing along to Jeff Beck and Seal's version of Manic Depression on the 1993 release, Stone Free, a tribute to Jimi Hendrix. I never got to meet Jeff Beck, but I did get to see him a few months before he died, and man, that show was as inspiring as I had hoped. So that was my iPhone footage from the show that night, and as far as I could tell, he was playing a white version of this Jeff Beck signature Strat. Go figure, right? I was always curious about this guitar, and I always wanted to make a video about that song and this record, so it just seemed like the perfect time to put it all together. My friends at Sweetwater thought that was a great idea, and they wanted to sponsor the video as well, so big thanks to Sweetwater. You can of course check out the links to this guitar in the comments and description below. I want to show you some of the high points of this track. We'll go through it here later in the video, particularly that intro with the harmonics. I always struggled to figure out what that was. It's really cool if you pull it off right. And there's a couple licks in the solo that we could really use in our own playing, so I'll tab those out and demonstrate them a little later in the video. But I'm always curious about how these sort of collaborations come about, and like I said, I never got to meet Jeff Beck, but I have become friends with Seal. So I messaged Seal and I asked him if he'd share some thoughts and some comments about that magical day in the studio playing one of my favorite Hendrix tunes. Seal really crushes this vocal performance, and he does so in a way like Jeff does on guitar, where Jeff paid tribute to Jimi but did his own thing. Seal does the same thing. He adds some great Hendrixisms and the ad-libs. You'll hear all that when you listen to the track on your own, but I had to talk to Seal about a few things that happened on that day and what led up to that performance and recording session. So here's our conversation.
He got in touch with my management and I said, "You've got to speak to me." So we called him, we spoke on the phone. He said he was a fan, and he said that he was making a record, that he wanted to do something together. And he felt, I think he had heard me do a cover of Hey Joe. I think I did Hey Joe as a B-side or as on an EP earlier on.
Hey Joe, Joe, I heard a shot, Joe, let it out. They said you shot it downtown.
You know, he being a big Hendrix fan, he said, "Let's do some Hendrix." And I said, "Well, let's do something wacky like Manic Depression." And we ended up doing three tracks. It was Manic Depression, Wind Cries Mary, and I think Hey Joe. I think so. Do you know what? I don't know what's happened to the.
Oh man.
Hendrix was always, for me, it was less about him playing guitar, and it was more about the way in which he did what he did at the time that he did it. Him being an artist that just broke down barriers and broke all rules and wasn't necessarily singing R&B. There's before Hendrix, BH and AA. And after Hendrix, things were never the same. And so Hendrix was as much of an influence as he was on me. He was always that person that gave me permission to be different, to do something different. But in terms of, if you asked me to name my favorite guitarist of all time, it would probably be Jeff Beck. Because he could just make me cry. He had this uncanny ability to just elicit so much emotion just out of a person, with his playing. And until this day, I still cannot understand how he managed to get that tone and just that innate sense of, he's perhaps, in my books, the most lyrical guitarist I've ever met. By lyrical, meaning that he can narrate a song. He can deliver a song just through his playing with as much lyrical expression as I could. he could just bring me to tears. You know, one of my favorite stories about Jeff, I remember in the studio that day, there were many lessons learned, but this was a particularly huge one. I think there was a Strat lying around in the corner, like, you know, as there are in most studios. I had arrived early, and his roadie, I guess, hadn't brought his stuff and set up yet. And I had arrived early, and he was playing guitar through, I can't even remember, a Fender bass. I don't know, it could have been anything. And I thought, oh, there's Jeff Beck playing. And it was just the most beautiful tones that ever came, that you've ever heard. And I later found out that it actually wasn't his rig. And it was just a cheap old Strat. And it just goes to show, you know, it's, you know, people, much is made about a guitarist, you know, like gear that they use, you know, and I'm certainly guilty of that. But with Beck, it was in his fingers. It was just, he could pick up something from Walmart and it would sound like Jeff Beck. Another thing that just really blew me away about Jeff was that, you know, for someone so legendary and for someone so great, he's one of the most humble musicians I've ever met. And, you know, relatively speaking, I'm this new kid on the block, you know. Now, okay, I've been doing it for about 8-9 years before we actually, you know, I broke through about 8-9 years prior to this session with Beck. But it's a relatively new kid on the block, you know, and I had this idea with Manic Depression, we should do it, but then we should kind of go into this halftime group.
She's so willing. She's the cause of my pain.
And he was like, yeah, let's try it, you know, and he was just so open to it and crushed it. And, you know, again, that's where I think I've been so fortunate in that if you were to ask me what is, you know, the best aspect of your career, essentially your life, like what has it been, right up there with, you know, being able to use music as an expression and communicate with people, it would be that I got to work with some of the greatest musicians on the planet and who've ever lived. I've really been fortunate as a singer that I've worked with a lot, whether it's Joni, whether it's Jeff, whether it's Stevie, David Bowie. You know, I sang a duet with Prince once. You know, Wendy and Lisa, that I've been so fortunate to have, you know, to make records with. It would be that I've had access to the greatest musicians on the planet, and Jeff Beck, you know, in this case being one of them. It's my favorite thing. So for him to be open to a suggestion like that for me down halftime, it just blew my mind, you know, and so that's how that song came about. And I remember just having the best time, and you know, I had to sort of remember to sing, because I would just marvel at his playing. And again, he's so lyrical. It literally was like doing a duet with another singer. You know, he was special, Jeff Beck, and just so warm and so he just had this way of making you feel like you belonged, like making you feel worth it. You know, he's you know. I think all of those things go into, you know, my previous comment about him probably being my favorite guitarist of all time.
You led right into that section I wanted to talk about, the breakdown, and you guys are kind of trading back and forth, and you even do some like Hendrixisms, like, you know, because Jimmy would.
Yeah, a bit too much. Probably.
No. I mean, it was an homage. You did it like as like a wink and a nod almost when you were like, yeah, you know, like those kinds of things. And here's what I thought about when I re-listened to it this morning, and it was as if Hendrix was in two people playing his song, and it felt like that. I was like, whoa, the vocal and the guitar.
Jeff really loved Hendrix. Like he idolized Hendrix, you know, like, you know, Jeff Beck was my idol, And then, Hendrix was Jeff's idol. Like, he had so much respect. And my only regret, Corey, especially now that we get to do this, was that I didn't ask him more about Hendrix. I never spoke with him about that. And I guess it's probably out of, respect. He probably would have felt. But, because I was in such awe of him, great Jeff Beck. But we never spoke about, but I know he did say that he just idolized Jimmy. He thought he was the greatest that ever lived.
That track sounds so loose and so much like you guys just set up and went for it. Is that really what kind of happened?
We did. Yeah, we did really. Yeah, we both knew the song, and so we both knew the music. So it was relatively, we just kind of went for it. We pressed record and sort of, and took the first thing that. And I think that was probably the second take. And luckily for me, that's how, he liked to work like that too. He never played the same thing twice.
Right.
You just had to be that person who pressed record because magic was going to happen.
Seal, I can't thank you enough for helping me out and telling the story about your contribution to the Stone Free Hendrix tribute record and your Jeff Beck story, man. It is just fantastic to hear those stories because it definitely had an impact on me. And you sound just as great as he does, so you should know that, man.
That's a huge compliment.
Oh man.
And thank you for taking my call when I first sought you out, and yeah, anytime I get to talk and remember working with the great Jeff Beck, that's those are memories that I'll take with me forever. So thank you for the opportunity to take me back down memory lane, as it were. It's that'll be right up there with my final memories. Got to work with the great Jeff Beck. Yeah, how about that?
So big thanks to Seal. He's become a great friend, and we know he's a talented artist with an amazing catalog of tunes, but he's even a better person, and it's been really great getting to know that man, and can't thank him enough for helping me out with this video. So there's some things Jeff plays in the solo that I was really taken with, so I decided to learn those and transcribe them, and I'll make those licks available to you, and we'll talk about them shortly. But I also wanted to show you this intro with the harmonics that he's playing. I transcribed that too. It's wicked. And it's pretty challenging to get to sound right and play exactly. So I want to talk to you about all that stuff, how I got the sound, how I approached it, and we'll talk about those licks too after I show you this stuff. But I'm just playing this stock Jeff Beck signature Strat right out of the box. Put the trem arm in. It's got the classic roller nut that he was into for these tremolos. He's on it all the time, and he wants it to be in tune. So I got to thinking, he was a car guy. He was really into hot rods. Ball bearings are in this. Probably made sense to him. Some people don't enjoy this nut, but for this kind of guitar, I think it's good for doing all the Jeff Beckisms with the 2-point trem. It's got locking tuners, noiseless pickups. I haven't kept up with what Fender's doing with pickups these days, but these pickups sound good, and they're pretty noise-free for a Strat. They sound pretty good. So just coming out of this guitar, going into my 1973 100-watt Marshall, and I'm harnessing its power with the Universal Audio aux box. Now that's like a little guitar studio in a box. It gives me cabinets, microphones, room sound, delay, reverb, compression, EQ, and it has a preset in there that I stumbled upon called Where is the Guitar Shop? So I was like, this has to be the Jeff Beck preset. So I started getting some fun sounds on it and did my feeble Jeff Beck impression. You hear a lot of reverb, there's some delay in there, and that might sound like a lot just by myself, but in the track, it worked really, really well. But I wasn't able to play along with the track in this tuning because the whole band is tuned a half step low. So instead of resetting up this guitar and messing with the tremolo, and Strats are tough for me, I don't set them up by myself very well. I usually take it to a pro, but I would have had to probably change the string gauge too. So I just said, let me use my Digitech Drop pedal, and you're hearing it right now. It is on, and it's playing this guitar a half step low. If I take that pedal off, watch this. Back up a half step. So that's what I was doing to get my tuning to a different spot, or down a half step, and then the tone as well. I'm also using a compressor. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But that's a great tool to have at home if you're trying to play along to some records that are half step low and you don't want to go messing with your guitar. Now, why the compressor? Well, when I throw my bridge pickup on and I want to play some of this stuff, if I turn that compressor off, I can get that intro pretty well. But what the compressor does, it's going to grab my notes immediately. I'm plugging into this first, then into the 1176 after. And I'm adding a lot of compression here because I want it to grab the note and really make it punchy and prominent, particularly those harmonics. So what I did was, you'll see the knobs. I got a lot of compression going on there. So let me show you what I get with the compressor. Fingers crossed. Wow, okay, I got it on the first try. That's not true. I did about 5 takes of this already. But in this full take, I nailed it. You have to be confident and play pretty aggressively with your pick, but then get off of the note pretty quickly. So it's a 4th string, 7th fret, then the 9th fret, 5th string, then the 3rd and a quarter, you have to kind of come in a little bit from that 3rd fret on the 5th string. And what he's kind of doing is playing a triad for an A. Probably knocked it out of tune some. That's what we got tuners for. But to hear that, you got to get it right in that spot just before the fret. But still hit a little of the fret too. It's pretty tricky. Now when I go to the next chord, he plays almost an E triad. Well, he does. And those notes are on the 5th, 4th, and 3rd frets, which is, it's really like E, G sharp, and B, but these notes ring out from there, there, and there. So think chromatically or harmonic down, even though it's giving you a triad. Yeah, so there we got it. Here, 7, 4th, 9, 5th, and trying to get that one. And then those 3 for the E triad. It's hard to get. That's why I needed that compression to really hold that note. Now what he does here is he goes for like a G power chord, but he does it with these harmonics here on the 5th fret, 4th and 3rd strings. And then he pulls up on the bar. You could probably even get, I think it's just those 2. In the heat of the moment, I do it much better than trying to teach it because you gotta go for it. Now, what I heard in the track, I was able to isolate that guitar part. The tone of the intro is different than the rest of the band. I don't know if that's in post mix or if it was something they did as an overdub. But either way, I definitely heard really compressed in the beginning. Then when the band comes in, it's less compressed. So that's what I did when I started kind of playing around. And yeah, like, would Hendrix have that reverb and delay? No, but Beck did, and it worked really well with the track, to the point where I was like, damn, that's actually pretty close to the original sound. I got lucky, what can I say? But that's what I was doing to get those sounds. Now, there's 2 licks in the solo that I want to show you, so if you've stuck around this far, the payoff is coming. So that was the lick I heard at around the 130 mark of Jeff's solo. And what I decided to do was turn the pedal off, stay in standard tuning, so if you're following along, you don't have to retune your guitar. But what I have to do is pitch the track up a half step. So I'm able to do that in my software, and we can try to get a beat on what he's doing here. So listen to this. Kind of hard to hear, so what I did was I used a program online called Moises, and I uploaded a stereo MP3 to it, and what it does is it can separate the song into multi-tracks. Guitar, bass, drums, vocals, keys, that sort of thing. It does a decent job. The quality is just okay, but it's really good for learning. So check this out. If I go to about the same spot and we listen to just the guitar track, now he's got some strings happening in there, some droning stuff, but this is basically what he's doing. He's focusing a lot in this solo on A major pentatonic, which I love that he's doing that, as opposed to just going for the A minor pentatonic, where a lot of us would probably go, for our first attempt, really, at creating some licks and solos. Now, what we're gonna do here is play an open string fifth string, that's our A, and we're gonna hammer on third to the fourth, that's C to C sharp. And I think now that's getting me into my major pentatonic world. So that's the entire measure, first measure of that lick. Open, A, C to C sharp, third to fourth. And I like to do that as a hammer on. Now what I do here is I go from my E on my fourth string, second fret, to an E flat on the first fret, fourth string, and that's gonna give me almost like a flat 5 blues scale note. It's a pretty cool sound. Then he comes back to that C sharp on the fourth fret, fifth string. From there, he's gonna play an open third string G, so that gives us a flat 7 type of sound against the A. Then he's gonna play E to F sharp on the fourth string, second and fourth frets. Back to the open string third. And then you'd play that third string again, but then pull on the bar. So altogether, it sounds something kind of like this. And he gets some other strings ringing too, maybe this. That's kind of what a Jeff Beck sound is to me. You can hear some of the other vibrations happening a little bit from the strings, but not too much with the way I'm playing it. Fun lick over an A type of groove. And Jeff would hold the bar often, we know, when he would play. So at a moment's notice, he could grab it. Really, really cool lick. And if I hadn't been able to kind of pull the track apart, I probably wouldn't have been able to even hear it that well. The other lick that Jeff plays, which is pretty straightforward, comes from minor pentatonic. It's a very, sort of blues rock approach, but he ends it with that sixth interval, which when you hear it all in context is very cool, and I'm gonna certainly steal it. Anything stock doesn't sound stock when it's through Jeff's hands. So we want to kind of get a little bit of a closer look. Let's listen to it. It comes at the 3:35 mark. We're about 3:25. Wow. Here it is. I thought that was really cool. It's kind of all out of A minor pentatonic until it gets to that ending. Something kind of like this. So I'd like to take that in 3 parts. Let's see if we can dissect that a little bit more. So think A minor pentatonic, and you're gonna do your classic sort of bend on the 3rd string, 7th fret. And that's your classic blues rock Chuck Berry thing, where you're bending, releasing to the 2nd string, 5th fret, and then the 1st string, 5th fret. Now in the second part of that lick, I'm gonna reach over with my third finger for strength, 8-5, which is G, E, second string. What he does there from this, 8-5-8, which is G, E, C on the second and first strings. The next measure you'll end on that A on the 5th fret, first string. Then go here, third string bend. You can't get quite a full step bend, so just go for it and abandon it. Because you gotta skip a string and go back to that A on the first. So you gotta have your muting together with your right hand. And then he slides into this interval of a 6th, which is an E on the bottom and a C sharp on the top. Very, very cool. Because it gives us an E, and that C sharp is the 5th and the 3rd of the A. I can tell you I've been playing licks like that for a long time, but never quite in that way. Really, really cool approach. I wanted to transcribe that and show it to you too, because it's something that you could put probably into your playing a little bit faster than maybe the other one or the Harmonics or anything else Jeff might do. Jeff was tough because he was so hard to steal from, because he was just his own guy. And man, that is really inspiring as I go on my guitar journey as well. What can I do that sounds like me? Jeff had it nailed for many, many years, and that's why we love him. Fender Strat actually turned 70 this year, and I imagine they're quite proud of that milestone. So I figured I wanted to do this video. I need a Jeff Beck Strat. Let's roll it all into one. Celebrate 70 years of the Strat with Fender here in 2024. So making this video was truly like taking a stroll down memory lane for me. I mean, I remember buying this record when it came out. I was in the early stages of my guitar playing. Of course, I was a big Hendrix fan, but I was also a fan of a lot of the bands on that record too, so I was super excited. And you know, doing what I'm doing now as a professional guitar player, having a YouTube channel in addition to my own career, you know, I would have never thought I'd cross paths with one of my favorite singers in Seal. But you know, that's what the internet and, you know, this music community can bring, is people that you never thought you'd have a relationship with. Seal's an awesome guy, and thanks again, Seal, for joining me on this video. Don't forget to download the transcriptions. You can grab those with the link in either the comments or the description. I'll also post links to some of the gear that I use to get the sounds in this little studio to try to create the tones for this track. And let me know in the comments what you thought about this tribute record or any of the other ones that we flashed up on the screen earlier. There was one for Zeppelin, Kiss, the Eagles. They were all really, really good in my opinion. What were your favorites? What did you like? Hit me in the comments. Love to hear about it. Until then, y'all, I want to practice some Jeff Beck licks. I'll see you next time.